Welcome to Africa Update this week. It's another episode of our program. And this week we're going to be doing a review of what has taken place on the continent. Before I continue, compliments of the season. It's the end of the year, Yuletide season, a lot of shoppings and things are happening around there. To stay with us, Africa Update continues. Yes, welcome back. My name is Chiamaka Nwafor. I'm your host for the program this week, Africa Update. As usual, of course, your host all the time. We're doing a review of our happenings on the continent. It's been quite a very busy year actually for us in Africa, rife with elections, rife with coups, security issues, some spilling over from recent years. They're talking about the Sudan conflict from 2023 up until now in 2025. The DRC Congo conflict as well, with so many meetings being held to try to resolve the issues. However, we didn't see any solution and the year is coming to an end. But I'm not going to be doing that review here in the studio with me. Joining me to further help us understand and help us, go take a look at these issues is Ambassador Bulus Lolo. He's a former diplomat and it's a good pleasure having you on the program this week. Now, let's give you a brief intro. 2025 was a pivotal year for Africa. Now, it was marked with political realignment, security challenges, economic pressure, and growing global attention. Yes, had a lot of people come on the continent. There's the China, there's the France, there's the Russia, because there's America trying to intervene in DRC and Rwanda situation. There's Russia intervening over the Niger and all that situation taking place over there. Now let's go to politics and governance. We see that elections, several countries held high stakes elections, including South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Cameroon, and Mozambique. And of course, some of those elections had its funny outings. Some of them were largely peaceful in some states, but towards the end of the year, in the last few months, we saw very non-peaceful elections, but contested or controversial in others, with allegations of irregularities, voter suppression. Now we had coups and democratic reversals. We see that in Guinea-Bissau, in, of course, the Sahel region under Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. And these developments raise questions about the future of constitutional governance. Now, security conflict, we still have the Sudan situation, the DRC situation, and of course, here in Nigeria and the Sahel region, the Boko Haram and ISWAP, or rather ISWAP, some people will say, situation, and in Somalia, the Al-Shabaab situation. Of course, there's the economic situation, debt, big issue, and that was one of the major focus and topics of conversation for the G20 this year, but that took place in South Africa, Johannesburg, the first of its kind on the African continent. Of course, cost of living crisis created some protests that we saw in Kenya and here in Nigeria, the October 1 to 10 hashtag end bad governance protest and the 7/7 protest that took place in Kenya as well. All about cost of living, and all that for Nigerians. Now let's go over to the global stage where we had, of course, the first G20 summit, and we had the first African-Europe summit that took place in Luanda, Angola, amongst all that. And of course, the climate COP30. But let's look at a conversation. Some of these things had their timelines. January to March was a conflict and culture, early signals. February had its own theme. Of course, some nice things happened and all that in that few time of the year. We don't have much time today, so we're just going to delve into the conversation to cover up all these issues, all these major issues. Now, 2025, before we start pointing the different categories.
All right.
What do you make of it? How has Africa fared in 2025?
Well, thank you again, and it's a pleasure to be with you, Chiamaka, and having 2025 in review. Seems like only yesterday when we said Happy New Year to each other on January 1 and the first week of January. Now we are in December, coming to the tail end of the year. So looking back to the past 12 months, of course, it has been a year like a mixed bag. There have been moments that were good and sweet. There have also been moments of tears, and then others in between. So bittersweet year it has been. 2025, and for us in Africa and Nigeria in particular, It's a year in which we would look back first with gratitude to God that we have survived as a people. Peace, stability, security, not fully what we want it to be, but we've not disintegrated as a country. And so that is another reason to be thankful to God for. And as we look forward to 2026, we pray that the gains of 2025, we are beginning to see inflation coming down. Whether that translates into the feel-good factor for the average Nigerian is a different question altogether. But we want government to deepen what it is given to the people, especially in the area of security. Has been, and towards the last quarter of the year, if you look at the events in Kebbi, the events in Kogi, and then Niger State that were yet to fully have a resolution. We pray that in 2026, the incidents of kidnapping, banditry, and the rest of it will be overcome.
Okay.
So that's my prayer and hope.
Okay.
For the country.
I see that towards the end of your speech, you honed mostly on our beautiful country, Nigeria, talking about the happenings. Yes, they're quite, some of them have been sad, as you said, the issues in Kebbi, Niger, where the school children were, of course, kidnapped, and the abduction stories that plague the Lokoja, Kogi state area. Now, let's hone on issues one by one. Right. Four major issues we're going to look at today on the program. Elections. We had some elections this year. We're going to South Africa, where we see that ANC didn't have the majority, so they had to come into an arrangement, a marriage of some sort with the DA party over in South Africa. But, you know, and then we come over to towards the tail end of this year, we see how the elections went in Cameroon, the elections went in Tanzania. Generally, what do you make of elections in 2025?
Wow. You see, I think we may have to spend time as Africans to ask ourselves whether our elections really meet up to the expectations, where you are talking of democracy and you define it, you know, as the government of the people, by the people, for the people. And in regard to which or with which now you use elections as barometer. Tanzania, for me, was a big surprise because having the first female president to rule Tanzania, now conducting an election that did not meet the expectations of the people, an election in which candidates of the opposition party were barred from participating. One would ask, where is Tanzania heading to? And in Cameroon, where Paul Biya has been president since 1982, and at 92 going to 93, how strong is Paul Biya that he has presented himself for another term in office and he won his election? Is it really on the back of his success as a president, or he has used the instrument of state to perpetuate himself in office? And who is paying the price for Paul Biya remaining in office? Certainly somewhere something is not adding up. Okay? And so if this is how to conduct elections, where an incumbent will remain in office whether the people like it or not, I think, like I said, we have to pause and ask. I've expressed myself on this, where the civil class alienates itself. You create the room for the military to find the excuse to intervene on the side of the people, building on the discontent of the masses. But made possible by an insensitive civil class that wants to remain in office at all cost. There, it's Kennedy who said, if you make peaceful change impossible, violent change becomes what? Inevitable. So I pray again that Africa, in managing its elections, will be smart to do it right for its own good and for the good of the people. Otherwise, our elections will become a sham.
So now, with what we've seen in 2025, should we be worried that democracy in...
Certainly, yes. It's in retreat. And it's no excuse to claim that around the world democracy is in retreat. All right? Take care of your home front. Take care of your backyard. If there is fire burning, put it out. Never mind if there is a fire 1,000 miles away. Deal with your own backyard first. Then you can go to put out the flames elsewhere. But in Africa today, I mean, Alassane Ouattara in Cote d'Ivoire has been sworn in for a 4th term of office. For Gnassingbé Eyadema in Togo is in office and has been in office since 2005. 20 years down the line, meaning there is no successor. In fact, anyone born in Togo from 1963 or thereabout to date has not known any other president than an Eyadema or a Gnassingbé as we have today, because Eyadema succeeded his father and he's in office. So a 62-year-old person
yes,
has not known any other president than these two. What does that say about our governance? And is it that under their reign, Togo has been transformed into another Singapore? Under their reign, the, what do you call it? The, well, I've forgotten what I want to say about, but you know, the GDP has so grown that people per capita income in Togo compares with the first world. You have a situation where poverty is growing, insecurity is growing, yet people want to perpetuate themselves in office. This is what I'm saying about the quality of our governance must be improved, if not transformed, in a manner that the ordinary person feels good about himself and herself and are proud and dignified to be citizens of the countries that they belong to.
Okay, now one of the offshoots, another major thing that took place on the continent this year, one of the offshoots is the issue of coups.
Yeah.
These were the responses of coups, of the elections rather. So we move from the election to the responses, and then we go to just recently.
That is because there is no, this is exactly what I'm warning about. That if you don't have a credible opposition, all right, the only other group then that has the means to put an end or checkmate the civil leadership is the military. It goes without saying that they are then the only other, because they have the instrument of coercion under their control and can effectively use it. I mean, come to think of it, all right? We talked about Benin last week, right? Where an attempt failed. But in Niger, what happened? It succeeded. Where was Bazoum? He was right in the presidency, getting ready, in fact, to go for a function. And the military said, no, Mr. President, you are not going anywhere. So what if the Benin coup had succeeded? It would be a different story altogether now, which means if you have your hand on the trigger and you are powerful enough to give a threat and defend a little space where political authority is exercised, and no one challenges you, you remain leader in place. And
Okay.
that's how easy it is.
Okay, so I'm going to stay on something you said, and I'm going to bring it back here in Nigeria. You said if we don't have a credible opposition, and I hate to say, but it seems in Nigeria we are beginning to lose credible oppositions, which you see states are turning into the current ruling party. What does that tell for us as a country?
It's hard to say, all right, because our own election in Nigeria and our own democracy too is supposed to ride on the separation of power between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Now, if these three arms of government do not work effectively, there is bound to be tension in the polity. And how far that tension goes, nobody knows. There have been rumors, there have been allegations, there have been speculations, and all manner of stories flying about whether or not in this country since 1990, when was the last military coup that we had? I think Abacha was the last military head of state to have carried out a coup. Now, whether since 1993 there has been another coup attempt, not minding what was said about the late Oladipo Dia and his own attempt, all right? Nobody knows. But the issue here is, and I hope that our leaders will listen and listen to the cry of the people, where your acceptance should not come from your ability to manipulate an electoral system. Your power should not derive from your ability to find your way in the courts. Because even our courts must wake up to one fact, that there is history and legacy. Whatever you do today will outlive you. If you leave a good legacy, you will be remembered for good. But if you leave a bad one, in death you can't come out to change it, all right? And so talking about whether our opposition will survive or not is for the politicians to decide. Ghana, and I point to Ghana as my example, between the NDC and the MPP in Ghana, none has succeeded itself back to back. There is always that break after 8 years. It may be NDC for 8, but after 8 years, NPP will come. And I like what John Dramani said following his last election, that he's aware that if he fails, the people will punish him. Are our politicians willing to subject themselves to the real punishment and pain of the people? And if they are not, then it's a different thing altogether.
Okay, we're going to go on a short break, and then when we return, the conversation continues. Welcome back to the program. Well, yes, you saw me talking to my guests when we were having a conversation during the short break. Now, going back to you, we've done elections, we've done coups, and time is very limited. Let's go to something that's quite very important, plaguing the continent, and we saw quite a lot of issues this year, and it's security. We go over to the DRC M23 situation, which we discussed, before. We equally go over to what's happening in Sudan. The conflict has refused to, come to an end. It seems to be there. And the little pockets of violence in Somalia, of course, right here in Africa, in the Sahel region, with the Boko Haram and ISWAP situation. How would you have made the situation of the security issue of Nigeria in Africa for 2025 so far?
We have a long way to go when it comes to security in Africa, and 2025 especially, with the examples that you cited. M23, the agreement signed barely 2 weeks ago. But right now, we are still hearing, in fact, it's like the observance of the agreement is in its breach. That is how I will classify it, that the agreement has been observed in breach, meaning it is not holding, all right? And I always feel for the common person, that down and trodden individual who has no hope but needs hope and wants hope, and expects hope from those who are in authority. Take a look at the leaders who are behind the violence we're having on the continent. Whether you're a rebel leader, you're leader of a terror group, they always look well-built, living well. On the back of what? The poverty, the pain, and the general destruction that they bring about in order to be where they are. Meaning they have no conscience. They have no feelings for the very people that they want to lead. Because if you do, as a leader, your follower is hungry, you like to give them food. Your follower is sick, you like to give them medication. Your follower, whatever they need, you'll go out of your way. That is what you are as a good shepherd. But if, on the other hand, you live for yourself, your family is well taken care of, then nobody else would matter to you. And that is self-serving leadership, and we don't need that on the continent.
Okay, one question. What has 2025 revealed about the limits of diplomatic mediation in solving long-term African problems or conflicts?
Limits of diplomatic mediation? I will not use that expression, Chiamaka, because diplomacy has no limit per se, but it is the will of the people. And I'm a very strong advocate of preventive diplomacy. If you engage in preventive diplomacy, you will invest in endless dialogue, and you'll be willing to go the extra mile. But where you see diplomacy proven, as you want to put it, that it has its own limit, it is because the will is lacking. There has to be the political will always to take those hard, painful decisions. But for what? The sake of peace. If you fail to do that, there will be no end. M23 in DRC. Why is DRC still in crisis? Why is Sudan in crisis? If you were to take a survey and see the number of people who are involved, you would see that they are just a handful. You can bring them around the table, but these are the same people who will never bring themselves to sit around the table. Rather, their wealth, whether in terms of their intellect, their wealth, whether in terms of financial resources, or any other instrument that translates as wealth, is what they are using to perpetuate themselves and refuse to reason. And therefore, you have the continuation of the crisis in the Sudan, the crisis in the DR Congo, and even here in the Sahel near us. There is no end in sight.
All right. Away from coups and security situation, let's go to another thing. All these things seem to be fallout of certain things, but it has to do with the largest demography of people on the continent. That's youths and their protests in the year 2025. Kenya saw a lot of that. It was back-to-back from the finance bill, then the 7-7, and then here in Nigeria we had the August protest, which actually took place. And that was, what do you make? What does this say about the youth, African youths?
The African youth is calling for attention. The African youth is calling for investment. The African youth is asking government to be responsive and not insensitive to their needs. And if the future belongs to the youth, the leadership must be careful not to alienate the potential leaders of the continent. And it's a clear warning. Now, I'm not aware of any revolution where the elderly have led. Rather, it has always been the youth that have been at the forefront, in the vanguard of struggles. Can it happen in Africa? Can it happen in Nigeria? Your guess is as good as mine. I will be lying if I look at you in the face and I say I can predict that never ever will there be a youth revolution in Nigeria if they are pushed to the wall. Don't ask me where the wall is. Don't ask me how thick that wall is. But there is a wall out there. And unless the leadership today recognizes that, the leadership takes that into account. It may not be during my lifetime, all right? But what I'm saying may come to pass.
Okay, let's take a look at some of these issues we've spoken about and what could some of the unresolved issues in 2025, how could they, which ones especially are most likely to spill into 2026? We can see that the Sudan thing seems to just be rolling itself over into the years as it goes. Which issues are we seeing? Are we expecting the elections situation to keep spilling over in 2026? What exactly are we, what's the outlook we should have?
When you ask me to spill over into 2026, you can see I'm even smiling. Because 2026 is only a matter of days from today.
Yes, actually.
Okay? So what do you think between, today is the 17th, right? Exactly 14 days from today, it will be the end of the year. Okay. So are you asking that miracles will happen in the next 14 days? So all those issues that you feel are unresolved today may, unless something dramatic happens, spill over into 2026. But what we should pray for is that when we enter 2026, may they not remain at the same level that they are today. Meaning we want to see a de-escalation of conflicts on the continent. We want to see a meltdown in the level of insecurity. We want to see things really having reason for people to say, oh, 2026 will be better than 2025. That should be my hope and prayer. All
right, thank you so much, Ambassador Bulus Lolo, for your insights on our short, review of the year. Time is not on our side. We could stay here and we could go on and on about the issues that plagued our country in 2025.
Thank you.
How we could move forward from it. But thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you very much, Chiamaka.
That's it for Africa Update this week on the program. I'm sure a lot of people are getting ready for those that travel home to spend the Yuletide season, the festivities with their family, friends, and loved ones. Do well to keep safe. Please do well to actually keep safe. Have fun, have reasonable fun, and of course enjoy yourself. Compliments again of the season. I've been your host today, Chiamaka Nwafor. Same time, same place next week. Bye for now.